course it's better to have a president that's supportive, but now since we don't, stop whining and let's move forward. I motivate people to get off fossil fuels. I think if Europe would have continued, Austria and Germany and all, it would have continued with the nuclear power plants, they wouldn't have been caught with their pants down and relying on Russia. Remember, when a snake bites you, it's the snake's fault. But when the snake bites you the second time, that's your fault.
It's your fault.
You know, and so that's as simple as that.
I like that.
Every year, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the celebrated Hollywood actor and former California governor, hosts a major climate change conference in Vienna. He always invites a special guest. This time it's EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jørgensen. And we asked them about climate policy in the midst of the current global energy crisis and in times when the EU rolls back its Green Deal and when in the US President Donald Trump calls climate change a hoax and scraps all climate measures. Mr. Schwarzenegger, well, there's now some hope that the Iran war will stop, but still we're in the middle of what some people call the biggest energy crisis in history. And people are worrying how to fill up their cars, how much it will cost, whether there will be enough aviation fuel to fly on vacations in summer. And you want to motivate people to do more for the climate. Is that possible in such a situation?
Well, first of all, I motivate people not to do something for the climate. I motivate people to get off fossil fuels and to rely more on renewable energy, or for countries to build more nuclear plants, to have clean energy. Because if we have clean energy, then we don't have to worry about pollution, we don't have to worry about climate change, we don't have to worry about icebergs melting or the rising sea levels or any of that. So the thing that I really try to persuade people to do is to think about, you know, let's get rid of fossil fuels and let's go to renewable energy. And now is a good opportunity for people to learn about that. Because in America, presidents since Eisenhower have always said it is important to only get a small percentage of energy from outside the country. But you got to be able to produce your own energy. Otherwise it becomes a national security threat. So Eisenhower was talking about it, Reagan was talking about it, Jimmy Carter was talking about it. So it was Democrats and Republicans talked about the importance of independence, energy independence. So then you go to Europe, and they were not prepared for being energy independent because they never thought that there would be a threat like that. And they got caught, what do we say in English, with their pants down.
Yeah.
And so now I think it's a wake-up call. That's why in my speech I talked about that we learned that fossil fuels are not only just dirty and unhealthy, that they are actually making us rely on those countries. So let's be independent. And I used an analogy of the cell phone. You know, that now when we went from asking and begging the phone company, how long does it take to get a phone for me? How long does it take to get a phone number? Those days are over. Now you have your phone and you're free. And so I want people to understand that you can also be energy free. You can go and put solar on your roof and you never ever have to call a power company again. You never have to beg for power or anything like this. You can go and get a car that is a electric car. So you don't have to go to the gas station. So none of it matters. So with the solar panels and with having the batteries, because the technology is now available, you have the batteries. So when it's sunshine and you get all the solar in the world, so then you go and you charge up the batteries. And then when you need it, when there's no sun, then you use it for heating or whatever you want to heat it. So the technology is available. So I think it's a reminder for people to say, you know something, this was the last time we were caught with our pants down. You know, and so leaders like him mobilizing and bringing all the countries together and trying to adjust now to this new reality.
And what should we do right now when the prices are so high? I mean, should we pause climate policy a little bit, or should we actually double down?
No, I don't think there's doubling down. I think we should continue with everything the way it is. And I think that Europe is getting out of this crisis within the next few years. They're going to get out of it. I think Europe has learned a lot from that. The people that I talk to, it's just amazing how quickly they're adjusting now. And it was a very difficult time, and I think people should realize that it is not the politicians' fault in a way, because this is something that will happen that surprised the entire world. So there are some countries that are liberals, some countries that are conservatives, some countries that are dictators. No matter what it is, they all were surprised by how they were hit and how they had to make the adjustments. So I think that we should learn from that. Remember, when a snake bites you, it's the snake's fault. But when the snake bites you the second time, that's your fault.
It's your fault.
And so that's as simple as that.
I like that.
Commissioner, some European countries reacted by subsidizing fossil fuel prices. Austria did this. They called it a Spritpreisbremse. I think you are against that. Can you tell us why and what government should do instead?
Well, first of all, let me say I do understand, of course, the political pressure, and I do understand, and I think it's totally valid that you want to help the most vulnerable parts of your population. Having said that, it is actually a little bit like trying to cure diabetes by giving the patient sugar. You do the opposite of what you want. What you want is to become independent of the expensive fossil fuels, and instead you subsidize it. So what I would like to see, and what hopefully we will also manage to do in Europe, is to move away as fast as we can from the fossil dependency, because really this is not an energy crisis, this is a fossil energy crisis. Our renewables are cheaper, they're flexible, we can deploy them fast, they're homegrown, and if we manage to speed up our transition, I do think it's feasible for us within a not too distant future to be independent. And then this whole discussion on whether or not to subsidize in times of crisis will be over.
So was the EU actually wrong in rolling back parts of the Green Deal? I think you put off the ETS2, right? Fuel prices for heating and for cars and that. I mean, so actually you delayed it.
No.
And now we're in a situation where we would have been better off if we had done all that.
So if we're looking at what the European Union is doing right now, and what we've been doing for the last decade at least, and what we will be doing for the next decade, there's no doubt we're moving very fast in the right direction. So are we sometimes changing a little bit the strategy? Are we moving a little bit back on some issues and then moving way forward on others? Yes, of course, that's how you make policies in a huge union with 27 member states. It's not easy. But I would say bottom line, President von der Leyen's leadership has been very clear on this. We will not step back on the Green Deal. And I think that argument is even stronger now, because as Governor Schwarzenegger said, this is about getting rid of a dependency. So no matter if you think climate change and the fight against climate change is the most important fight on earth, which I do, or you don't, it doesn't really matter, because this is about our security, it's about affordability of energy, and it's about fighting pollution.
Let's talk about the US a little bit. You have a federal government, you have President Trump, who basically scraps all climate measures. And states which want to continue, like California, he's used them. I mean, in these circumstances, is it even still possible to do climate policy in the US?
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter really to us as a state in California, because we went through this during the Bush administration. You know, the administration did not like our policy. They did not want to give us the waiver to regulate our own air. They were fighting us and they said we have to study it, and they had all kinds of reasons why they wanted to delay. And we took them to court. And we went all the way from the lowest to the Supreme Court, and we won. And the same is happening now. I think this is going to go through the court proceedings, and it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. We don't know where it's going to end up, but in the meantime, I think California is moving forward, and California is going to be, independent, energy independent, and even though the federal government now wants to drill for more oil in California and all of that stuff, but California is fighting back just like we did when I was governor. They're fighting back, and so there's, on the end it has to do with the courts, but I think the important thing is we have to move forward, and it doesn't matter what the Trump administration says. We have the power to do certain things, since 70% plus of renewable energy is created on a local or state level, not on a federal level, and therefore pollution reduction is happening on a state and local level and not on a federal level. So I always tell people, I said, of course it's better to have a president that's supportive, but now since we don't, stop whining. That was my message last year. Stop whining, and let's move forward. Here's the things that we can do, and we can move forward. This is something, because we can change things. We cannot just take him out of the White House or something like that. That doesn't work. So I always tell people we can move forward no matter what the obstacles are. And I think as far as Europe is concerned, and also America, I think we got to go and start thinking about nuclear power. Because I think that
it's very controversial in Austria.
A controversial issue. Anywhere in the world, it's a controversial issue, right? Not just in here. People are scared of nuclear power because there have been accidents, but when you explain it to them, that there have been 4,800 or so deaths by through nuclear accidents, but there's actually with fossil fuels that they use every day, we have 7 million people die every year. So there's no comparison. So I would rather just go with the nuclear threat, or that there would be an accident, rather than not having energy. I think if Europe would have continued, Austria and Germany and all, would have continued with the nuclear power plants, they wouldn't have been caught with their pants down and relying on Russia, because they would have their own power to create the heat in the winter and to create the energy in the summer, just like France does.
One point I would like to add is that there are some voices in Europe, unfortunately, arguing that if and when there's a peace in Ukraine, that we should consider starting to buy gas again from Russia because it's cheap. But our message from the European Commission has been very, very clear. Never again. Not one single molecule. We don't trust Russia. We will never trust them again. But even if we did, why should we go down that route again? We have the alternatives. We can grow our own energy. And if we do so, not only will our energy become cheaper, we will also be independent, and our security will be better.
To get back to the US once more, you think we should ignore Trump and work around him? I mean, you're not very worried. I mean, that he basically ruins climate policy in the US, or even more. I think you talked about democracy this morning. I mean, are you afraid that he will ruin the America you know, the America you came to like almost 60 years ago?
I love Nietzsche. And Nietzsche's quote, for every attack, there's a defense. So I want to make people aware, stop whining and look for the defense. And there's plenty of things, like I tell you right now, in California, to tell the ships that come into the ports not to use the dirty diesel fuel and to keep the engines running. No. We said, the California law says, stop the engines and plug into our electricity. They run now clean. Yeah. So Trump has nothing to do with that. There's no Trump saying, no, you can't say this to the ships. No. If we go and tell the people, we give you an incentive to go and build solar panels on the roof, Trump is not saying, whoa, you cannot talk to the people about the roof. So there's endless amount, like I was saying, there's so much space on the warehouses in California, and it hurts me when I fly over with the helicopter and I see all these millions and millions of square feet of space that can be covered with solar. and we would have another 10,000 megawatts of renewable energy. There's no Trump that will stop us on that. Not at all. It is us doing it. So I always say, let's not go and use excuses, because there's plenty if you want to use excuses. There's plenty of them. But let us go and get around the excuses and say, what can I do? We can go and encourage people to do specific things, to turn off the lights, to go and to buy electric cars, to have the right tire pressure, and all of those kind of things, to use solar panels and so on. I think that's the way to go, is to encourage people, give them incentives, and go in that direction. And then in 2 years from now, there will be a different president.
And you hope it's not a Republican, because you invited...
No, to me it makes no difference. Look, Republican presidents normally have advantages, and then Democratic presidents have advantages. So it depends just who is the person. You know, so you see what their background is, and you try to find out if are they really a public servant or they are a party servant. I hate party servants, people that have ideological kind of like principles, that they say, this is the way we do it, and this is the only way. Because the Democrats are wrong when they do that, and the Republicans are wrong when they do that. When I was governor, I tried to go and solve problems according to what is best for the people, rather than what is best for my party. What would my party endorse? No, my party hated me. Republicans, they say, Schwarzenegger, son of a bitch, he's making sometimes democratic decisions. They hated me. He's hanging out with Daddy Kennedy too much, as they accused me. As that has something to do with, they didn't understand that I come from Austria, which had socialized medicine, right? Yeah. So of course, as governor, I said, I want to have socialized, have universal health care in California. They said, what? You're a Republican, what are you doing? You're hanging out with Teddy Kennedy. So to me, that was normal, because I remember in Austria that anytime we can call a doctor or go to the hospital and use the hospital, and no one is asking, what is your insurance? No, you're with Kaiser. You can only use a Kaiser doctor. And then for that, you have to wait 3 months to get an appointment. It's all bullshit, right? So I made decisions that I felt were right. I think that's why I always was like one of the people's favorite governor, because I made people, they knew that I was making decisions for the people rather than for my party.
Excellent point.
We already talked about getting rid of fossil fuels. I mean, at the last UN conference in Belém, in Brazil, they tried it and they didn't get a majority of all the states. Some states were blocking, and now there is a kind of a coalition of the willing building up of states who want to do that. They met in Santa Marta in Colombia. I mean, you think that's the future of international climate policy? I mean, should you go with a coalition of the willing and ignore the ones?
I think it's both. I think if we look at what the COP process has actually achieved, it's not nothing. Look at what was decided at COP28 in Dubai. The decision to transition the world away from fossil fuels, this was a decision made in an oil state. It's quite impressive, actually. On the other hand, how do you translate a decision like that into real action? And here, it's clear we need a coalition of the willing. Plus, governments change. Now it's a different government in the US. In a few years, it might be another one that's leading again in the fight against climate change. So we need to, whoever is in the majority in those countries that really want a difference, to make a difference, to work together.
I myself, I'm a big believer in not villainizing oil. We need oil. Not villainizing oil companies, because we need them. But we got to go and subsidize as much renewable energy as we do with oil. So if, for instance, Austria incentivizes and gives people money for their fuel, the same amount should go to renewable energy. Because otherwise, what is the message? We are still supporting oil. rather than let's get off oil, let's get off fossil fuels, let's get off coal. So this is why it is important to incentivize people to go in a different direction. And I think that through technology, we eventually will get there, where look in China, like I said, half of the cars that in China that are sold now are electric cars. That means that this half will only use fossil fuels, or if they're really smart, like in California, you plug in, it is renewable energy that you're using and not fossil fuels, right? Yep. So this is where the action is. So technology will get us there. Technology also will help us to be more energy efficient. Like I was saying, that we used to use in California on a hot day, we used 52,000 megawatts. Now we're using, on the hottest day, 43,000 megawatts. So we're using less energy now because we are much more energy efficient. So we worked on both. How can we be more energy efficient, and how can we go up to renewable energy and get off fossil fuels? So we can do both. The key thing is not to villainize anybody. In weightlifting, I mean, I remember when the machines came in. When I was working out, it was all free weights, barbells and dumbbells, and the bench. There was no machine. Then all of a sudden they came in machine with a tricep machine and a pull-down machine, a leg extension machine, and all this. We didn't villainize the free weights, but all of a sudden they were replaced. Yeah. And now at my age, it doesn't matter what injury I have, I can use a machine, because there's a machine that does the deltoid movement this way, there's one that says a grip forward and front, that can do this way. I can work around the injuries now because of the machines, and I don't have to use the free weights anymore. So I think that things are being replaced because of technology, and I think the same thing is going to happen with fossil fuels. There will be eventually, look at the electric cars now. I mean, first of all, it used to be that the electric cars were for the rich people. They wanted to show off a little bit. Now, anyone can get it. Even though Ferrari came out with a $640,000 electric car, which is total bogus, right? I mean, I would never buy that. But the bottom line is, you can now buy Teslas and all kinds of Volkswagens and stuff that are cheaper, that are in the $30,000 range, that are affordable for people with a good credit line and stuff like that, where you can pay it off slowly and all this. So people have an opportunity now to change. We just have to educate them and let them know that pollution is the villain. Not the oil companies or anything. Pollution is the villain. Who is creating pollution? You. See, people have to understand that. Wait a minute. I'm the one. Every single time I go to the gas station and I put gas in my car, I create the pollution that kills people. I'm the guy that is running around with guns, boom, 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 and shooting around. And maybe you're catching someone, and you kill somebody. Well, we're killing people by just going. That's why I always said in gas station you should do like in smoking. Smoking, it says, this is deadly. Yeah. Right? In the gas station, when you pull in, it should say, this is deadly. This will kill you.
Not everyone agrees that people can do it all by themselves without help of the government and without help of the industry.
First of all, everyone agrees with anything. Yeah. Have you ever seen anything that everyone agrees with? It doesn't exist. It's a debate. I'm just giving you, it's not my way or the highway. I'm just saying, let's encourage people, let's explain to the people how it works, that they are part of the problem. And government has to be helpful to bring solutions to the table, so people have choices like electric cars, renewable energy, and all that stuff.
I guess it's also about creating the incentives as policymakers. Yeah. What Governor Schwarzenegger did in California became then really something that was an inspiration to others. Right. So other states followed, even other countries followed. We would like to do the same in the European Union, where some member states, Austria is one good example, my own country, Denmark, is another, that are actually doing well, deploying a lot of renewables. We want to show that to others, so that by that example, hopefully we'll move things.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We would like to hear from you. Please post your comments, and if you have enjoyed the interview, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.